So good morning, everybody, and welcome to Harriet Tubman Elementary School right here in Ward 1. Let me acknowledge Principal Amanda Delabar. Where's Principal Delabar? Let's give Principal Delabar a big hand. I wanted to say a thing or two about Principal Delabar, but maybe I'll wait till she gets here and Chancellor Alexander can speak to the excellent work that has been done here at Harriet Tubman Elementary under Principal Delabar's leadership and certainly with the excellent staff and students here. There's Principal Delabar. I was going to say these wonderful things about you and your team here, so why don't I get to it? Your team, and I wanted to talk about this specifically, came up with a strategy to deal with school attendance and challenges she found with attendance when she arrived. She created a hot list. I like that. Hot list, which included the name of every student who had missed more than 15 days of school in the previous year. And 40% of those kids in the following year succeeded in cutting their absences in half. And she did that with her team with a focus on each of those students. They expanded their efforts to visit homes to discuss with families potential barriers to kids attending school and offered them resources. Staff members also met with students on a weekly basis, and attendance has continued to improve. These efforts were highlighted in the Washington Post and in Streets Sense, and Ms. Delabar and her team have seen a 3-point rise in Tubman's Park ELA scores and 14 points in math. And today you are going to hear about how all of those efforts reflect in the Nustar system that we're introducing to the District of Columbia. Congratulations, Principal. I also want to recognize that I'm joined by the State Superintendent for Education, Hansul Kang, Paul Kine, who is the Deputy Mayor for Education, Amanda Alexander, who is the Interim Chancellor of DCPS, and Scott Pearson, who is the DC Public Charter School Board's Executive Director. And they make up our public education team in Washington, D.C. Thank you. So let me get right to it, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Kang to talk about the specifics. But we are releasing the DC School Report Card, a long-studied and long-developed framework, the Nustar Framework, that will give families across Washington, D.C. a set of common, reliable, and transparent data and information. The report cards, which include the Nustar Framework, are one of tools that our families can use as they make decisions about which school or schools are a best fit for their children. And I see Karen Williams, who chairs our DC State Board of Education, also part of our public education team. Thank you for being here, Karen. We all know that there are incredible things happening in DCPS and across our public charter schools. And in fact, we have schools who are earning 4 stars in every ward of the district, including the school we're in right now. Superintendent Kang is going to tell you about this 5-star rating system, all the metrics that go into this rating system, and all of the discussion that we've had over the last, I think, more than 4 years about how we developed this system. You will all know that it's a requirement, a federal requirement, that we have a common rating system across our schools. And I'm very proud of the work that our team has done to make sure that this number is reflective of all of the things that are happening in a school and in a school community. So we will certainly celebrate where we think the schools that have achieved 5 stars. We will also be very focused on schools that have received 1 or 2 stars. And the superintendent and our school leaders will talk to you about the interventions that we have planned for schools that are experiencing specific challenges. At the end of the day, we know there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Different school communities need different tools and resources in order to be successful. So as we roll out this new report card, our plan is to engage with schools and families across DC to support schools in developing improvement plans and to use this information to think about the district's decisions around policies and resources. So now let me turn to Superintendent Kang. We'll hear specifics, and then we will also take questions and answers. We'll take questions. We'll give answers. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bowser. We could not have done this work without your leadership, your commitment to education and to schools across our city, and to providing clear and transparent information to all of our families. I'm particularly honored to be here at Tubman Elementary School today because almost 2 years ago, this was the site of one of the hundreds of community meetings we've held over the last several years, where we heard feedback from the parents and families of this school community about what they would like to see on this new school report card and in the Nustar Framework. The voices of the parents and families here were among thousands of others from across the city that we heard to help us develop the strongest and most accessible tool possible for families and communities to use as they support their children. So I'm honored to be here today. For many years across our city, we have heard from parents and families about how they want clear and consistent information about how our schools are performing. And we know how important it is to offer transparency around our data and information. And that's why for the first time in the district's history, we are launching the new DC School Report Card with the Nustar Framework. It's our responsibility as public officials to be transparent about how our schools are performing so that we can equip parents and families to be in the driver's seat of their child's experiences in education and make the best decisions possible. And so for that reason, we're excited that this new report card includes information on academic performance, student growth and improvement, teachers in the school, extracurricular opportunities, parent organization information, and much more. And as I mentioned, I'm extra proud because this tool was built in partnership with DC families. Asti worked with thousands of parents, families, and community members to create this Nustar Framework and report card so that we could ask questions about what is the information that our families wanted to see and how could we design the tool to be used by parents, families, and community members. So we are excited to share the details of this new resource that has gone live this morning. So I will start by sharing some of the details. As the mayor said, we are particularly excited that we see schools earning 4-star ratings in every ward of our city, including this one right here, Tubman Elementary School. Let's give Tubman another round of applause. Having slight technical difficulties. Can we advance? Okay, great. Well, I'll speak and the slides can catch up. So the new DC School Report Card is a tool for families that allows them to access transparent and comparable information. It is launched this morning at dcschoolreportcard.org. It gives families a look into all public schools across the district, including all DC public schools and all DC public charter schools. And we're excited that this information for families, educators, and communities gives us all an opportunity to celebrate our schools and their strengths, and also to better equip all of us with information to focus on the places where we need to improve. We're particularly excited that this tool helps families with student-centered decisions. Because it was built in partnership with families, we know that we can help answer some of the most critical and common questions that families have. So for example, families can find out, are students prepared for the next level of learning at this school? How experienced are the teachers? What kinds of classes and extracurricular activities does the school offer? And what transportation routes are closest to the school? This new tool helps families answer all of those questions and much more. We're excited not only for families to use this tool to engage more deeply in their current school communities, and to make the best fit choices for their children. But we're also excited for system leaders to be able to use the report card to make better policy and resource choices and facilitate conversations across our schools and across our city about what's working in our education system and where more resources and supports are needed. And finally, we're excited for this tool to also be used to propel school improvement, to actually be used by our educators in creating a common language for them to use across our different schools, across our local education agencies, about what is working well and where we can improve. This information this new tool puts information and resources at the hands of teachers and principals across our city. I mentioned that this tool was built in partnership with families. We worked with 10 different community organizations and many other partners to hear from over 4,000 voices of parents, families, and community members over the past year to make sure that both the content and the design of the report card were meeting families' needs. I want to thank all of the partner and community leaders who worked with us, all of the parents and families who gave us feedback and input, and I want to give a special thanks to the State Board of Education and the ESSA Task Force, without whom we could not have reached this level of community engagement. The ESSA Task Force in particular spent many hours with us over more than a year, a long time, to make sure that we were hearing from families across our city, all parts of the city, all types of families, and that we were making the best decisions about how we could incorporate their feedback into our new tool. So one key part of the new school report card is the Nustar Framework, which stands for School Transparency and Reporting Framework, and offers a rating of 1 star to 5 stars for all of our DC public schools and DC public charter schools. This clear summative rating gives families a starting point about how to understand the performance of all of our schools. But it's really important, I think, to also understand the different data and metrics and information points that are included in that clear summative rating. The STAR rating includes information about academic achievement, academic growth, English language proficiency, meaning the rate at which our English learners are becoming proficient in the English language, school environment measures, including critical measures around attendance, and graduation rates for high schools. The measures and weights show how our schools are doing in supporting all groups of students, and these different data points are also displayed on our report card website for anyone who wants to dig into more detail behind the summative rating, which we encourage everybody to do. When we look across our city, we see a wide distribution of STAR ratings. So 19 of our schools earned a 1-star rating, or 9% of our schools. 55 schools earned a 2-star rating, or 27% of our schools. 73 schools earned a 3-star rating, or 36% of our schools. 39 earned a 4-star rating, or 19% of our schools. And 17 schools earned a 5-star rating, or 8% of our schools. Again, we're especially proud that we see 39 of our schools earning 4-star ratings located in every ward of our city. So we know that we have schools doing an incredible job located in every corner of our city. While we see that wide distribution of some of our most high-performing schools, we also know that we have some schools that are struggling, and those struggling schools are also located in many parts of our city. And so at Asti, one of the steps we are taking is we are investing $11 million over the next 3 years in the schools performing in the bottom 5% of the STAR framework. This is 10 schools that have been identified and are eligible for grants from Asti of over $1 million to spend over the next 3 years. We know that this kind of significant and sustained investment is what it takes to help a school improve from where it is now to what we know it can be. We are excited to work in partnership with these schools and local education agencies to help them improve their performance. So what's next? We hope that all of you will join us today in visiting dcschoolreportcard.org to start exploring our schools. You can find additional information there, including frequently asked questions, short videos, and a step-by-step user guide. We've also taken many steps to make this information as accessible as possible to all types of families and community members. The website is fully available in English and Spanish. It also renders on computers, tablets, and mobile devices. Supporting materials are available in 5 additional languages as well. And families and schools can also print hard copy PDFs of their report card. Families can find us tomorrow on Saturday, December 8th at EdFest at the DC Armory. Asti will be there with computers available for families who want to look up their report card on site, and we'll be there to answer questions. Asti will also be holding office hours throughout the month of January. The times and locations will be posted on our website, again, for families who want to come and ask questions live with our staff to help them understand what this data and information means. So I encourage all of you to join us in visiting the site today and exploring how this information can be used. So in closing, I want to underscore a few points. Again, we are incredibly proud of this tool built in partnership with parents and families to equip them with the information that they need to engage in their current school communities and to think about what best fit options are there for their children. But we are also proud to use this tool as a tool to help our entire education system improve. We know that equipping our teachers and our principals with this information at their fingertips will help us delve into what are the current strengths within their school building and where can they find additional exemplars of something that they may be focused on trying to improve. So for example, if you are a school that is trying to figure out how to better support English learners in speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills, you can go on the report card and see that another nearby school may be serving a very similar student population and maybe doing an even better job than you currently are. It gives you the chance to go and visit, learn from what that school is doing, and bring those practices back to your building. Other schools can come and visit Tubman and see what they are doing to achieve such strong academic growth, especially in math, and think about how they can bring those practices back to their schools. We encourage all of our schools, regardless of rating, to be digging in, looking for those areas of strength and the areas for improvement. And as part of showing how this system can be used to improve, at Asti, we will be soon launching DC's first ever All-Star Schools Tour, where we will be visiting a number of schools across the city that are doing a particularly strong job at serving particular student populations. So for example, students who are at risk or students with disabilities. We are excited to be visiting those schools, learning from what they do well, and we will be issuing a report about the promising practices that we see at those schools. And we want to call on others across the city to join us in this quest to explore this data and information, highlight those bright spots that are happening. We know that there are schools doing an excellent job in every part of our city. We want to learn from what they are doing so that we can better support all of our learners in achieving at the highest levels. So I want to thank you all for being here today, and I think now we are happy to take questions.
Yes.
Can you talk more about the interventions when you find a school that is struggling or doesn't get enough start?
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn to the Chancellor and to Scott Pearson to talk a little bit more specifically about the school level interventions, and the superintendent can say a little bit more about some Asti funded grants.
So I can start and then welcome the Chancellor and Executive Director to join us. So at Asti, we, as I mentioned, are concentrating $11 million in federal school improvement funds and giving access to those grants to the schools scoring in the bottom 5% of the Nustar Framework. This includes schools at different grade levels and from different parts of our city. What they will be asked to do is to work with their school communities, with their parents, families, and educators to develop a school plan that fits their context and talks about how they plan to use these funds to dramatically improve. And so we've been in touch with those schools already, and we look forward to helping them use these resources wisely to help them improve significantly over the next 3 years.
Good morning. For DCPS, this essentially means three things. All schools will have to develop a comprehensive school plan. That plan identifies key strategies that they should be using in the areas of literacy, mathematics, and social-emotional learning. For our lowest performing schools, DCPS, though, from a central office perspective, is looking really closely at the resources that we can deploy to our schools. Each school is unique, as the mayor has said. Each school has its own context, its own strengths and weaknesses. We want to work really closely with them at the central office to deploy the specific supports that they need. This year, for example, as it relates to principal supervision, all of our instructional superintendents have been equipped with an ELA specialist, an English language arts specialist, and a mathematics specialist who's deployed to the school to work with individual teachers and principals on that work. We'll build upon that. For the lowest performing of schools, those schools in the bottom 5%, we are going to look at employing innovative practices and engaging in strategies that are transformative. That may mean redesign and restart.
When you say just starting all over, rebuilding the staff?
No, it's redesigning with new program focus. It could be in the area of mathematics or literacy. It's really what the actual community wants to engage in. A key component of this work relies heavily on stakeholder engagement. Parents and teachers and our partners who have been in our schools thus far know what is best for the students in those communities, and we want to leverage their insights in helping to chart the path forward.
Good morning. There are very few public charter schools that are in the bottom 5%. There are just 5 one-star charter schools out of 99 rated. Each of those schools, as independent public charter schools, needs to chart its own course for improvement. And so I recommend that if you want to learn more, you speak with the school leaders about what they're going to do. I would just say 2 things. First of all, we're thrilled that Asti and the city are making available funds for these schools to use to improve. And the other thing is that the Public Charter School Board has its own accountability system, and of the 5 schools rated 1-star, 3 are being carefully reviewed by the Charter Board this year, and in some cases, low performance leads to school closure. Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Kang or Alexander, who's doing the judging? Who's doing the rating? Like, what outside entity is coming in and determining who's a 1-star school and which
Sure.
is a
So you
5-star?
heard from Superintendent Kang, who is our state superintendent, and Asti. She leads Asti, and Asti has been responsible for developing the system and for the data that go into the star rating. And actually, I'm going to ask the superintendent to talk a little bit about the components of the rating and the percentage that each component makes up of the rating.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, just as context, there was a new federal law passed in December 2015 called the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it required that every state throughout the country develop a way of looking at their school performance, a school accountability system. And so in D.C., we developed a state plan that that was approved by the State Board of Education and submitted to the U.S. Department of Education that outlined our plans for the Nustar Framework, and every state has to release these ratings by this month, December 2018. So we worked in partnership with many others throughout the city to build that rating system, but Asti is the group that actually issues it. And we have many folks actually from our data team here who have been working tirelessly to make this happen, and I just want to take a moment to thank them for their work. In our rating system, as the mayor mentioned, we look at a number of different components to reach that summative rating. So, and it differs by different grade levels, but for example, for elementary and middle schools, 40% of the weight is actually from academic growth or improvement, so the improvement students are making from one year to the next. 30 points is from academic achievement, so their performance on our state assessments. And then 5 points is from English language proficiency, how quickly English learners are attaining proficiency in the English language. And then the remainder is from school environment, so measures of attendance within the school, of re-enrollment rates, so the rates at which families are returning to the school. And then also for those schools with pre-K, some measures of the pre-K environment.
Subjective. You can't say, oh, they're doing fine. It's pretty.
No, they're all quantitative measurements, and that's actually a federal requirement that they be quantitative measures that are included.
30% are test scores? Is that what I heard?
So 30 points is academic achievement, so the percentage of students scoring at level 4 or higher on PARCC, and the percentage of students scoring at level 3 or higher. Another 40 points is based on student improvement on the state assessments, so growth or improvement that that people are making, that students are making. And I'll just note that I mentioned how important parent, family, and community feedback was to us in this process. One of the major things we heard from families throughout the city was how important it is to them to look at the growth or improvement that students are making on the state assessments. No matter where students are coming in, we know that they can learn and grow and improve, and so we weighted student growth or improvement as the single highest weight in the elementary and middle school frameworks.
It sounds like about 70% is based on test scores. Is that?
That's correct. And actually, the federal law requires that academic achievement and growth be the most significant parts of every state's accountability system.
And Mayor and Ms. Alexander, were you guys surprised how the numbers came, or is this kind of what you were expecting, or how many 5 stars there are compared to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4?
Well, all I can say about that is that I am pleased that there are, as you heard the superintendent say, across every ward schools that are performing at a high level. And I am also, I like information. Okay, so if we know that we have schools that are challenged and need interventions, this gives us a common framework to be able to discuss those challenges and interventions. And I think that's where we who want to invest in kids and want kids to succeed need to be. Yes.
So it sounded to me like your solution is to close the schools. Is that the same solution for the public schools? I'm just curious.
Well, they're all public schools, as you know.
The charter, the suggestion was that if the schools are low performing, they're going to close them.
Well, that's the case before Star Framework. The Charter School Board, of course, has the ability to look at a lot of different factors and decide from year to year whether a school stays open or stays closed.
Not the case with public schools.
Well, we don't usually make that decision from year to year. And as you heard the chancellor say, our focus is to look at what schools need and provide those interventions. And I expect that parents want to know that we're going to be able to say next year that these interventions help move all of those buckets for kids, their achievement on park, their growth at the school environment, attendance, and all of those things. And we have to be pretty confident in our plan to move those schools. They want to see growth at their schools.
Excuse me. I don't want to leave the impression that if a school is Tier 1 on the STAR framework, it's going to close. We have our own accountability system, and every school has an opportunity to improve, and we look at the trend in school performance. So it's clear that the Tier 1, the 1-star schools need to get better, and we're confident that they're working on that.
So they also get this assistance that they've been discussing. The 1-star school.
Any school that is in the bottom 5% is eligible for that assistance.
You did mention that the board would meet and maybe they'd be closed.
Some of 3 of the 5 schools are up for review this year, and so the board will be meeting later this month to discuss what should be done with those schools.
This compares apples and apples, right? I mean, sometimes when you're talking about charters and public, you really get confused because they have different systems. But this is apples and apples.
Yes. And there is a website, dcschoolreportcard.org. And let me remind everybody that we start the season with EdFest tomorrow. Is at the Armory? At the Armory. EdFest at the Armory, and the hours are 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., where families can learn about all of the schools in the district. Thank you, everybody.
Can I do it at the podium?
Yeah. Why don't you come out?
So
Okay.
the question was about the hospital.
Yeah.
And we've been looking at the East End Hospital. George Washington University Hospital has said basically that unless 2 amendments that the council considered are out of anything, that they're not going to be a part of the hospital process. I know you were with the CEO of the hospital in August announcing at St. East. What's your response?
Well, this is what I'm going to say, Sam, is that a very complicated projects like this can't be negotiated from the podium. And we continue to to be committed to making sure we're providing the best healthcare services for residents east of the river. They deserve no less. We last year put into our budget over $300 million, and we think that we have put in place viable plans to get us to a new hospital in 5 years. But we're going to continue to work with the members of the council on what their priorities are for healthcare east of the river.
You're concerned that, or well, let me say, how concerned are you that this deal will fall apart? Because that's the suggestion yesterday, maybe.
Well, let me just say, our negotiations are ongoing. They had not, what the council was voting on was not our deal. They were voting on really a regulatory process. So I don't know what they're going to do at the end of the day with the legislation regarding their regulatory process, but we are going to continue to make sure we have a viable path for the residents of Ward 7 and 8 who don't feel like they're close enough to a full-service hospital, and that has to continue to be our focus. There are a lot of things that come into these negotiations, but at the end of the day, all the members of the council have to ask themselves, have they done enough for the residents of Ward 7 and 8?
Finally, the big concern with a lot of them was Howard University, saying that their medical school could close if this hospital opens, and it would be a detriment to them. What are your concerns there?
Well, we are very grateful for Howard University Hospital, and we hope that the university will maintain its hospital. And that's the bottom line for us. They have a hospital, and we like to see it stay open. Thank you.